Hey, welcome to another episode of the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter. You know, every week I get a chance to bring new people into the studio, the virtual studio, for a conversation. Today's conversation is going to be with Stephen Rosen, Star Results. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about leadership and how do you lead an organization during uncertain times. Did I say the word uncertain times? Now, you know, I don't use the R word. You know what that R word means? Just uncertain times. So anyway, hey, why don't we get the show rolling? We'll get Stephen in here in just a moment.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Well, as I said, the topic today is how do you lead, how do you sell effectively in uncertain times? The guest today, Stephen Rosen. Let's get him on the screen there. There he is. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Mark. Glad to be here.
It is great to have you. Now, this is a connection that goes across the border because Stephen hails from Toronto, actually probably Mississauga or somewhere west of Toronto.
No. I used to work there, but
okay.
First of all, we have to say I hail from Canada, eh?
Hey. Okay, you're right. And we'll use the word process. But anyway, enough about that. Let's jump into the content.
Let's talk business.
We will catch some more A's and some more Canada in the after the show. But let's talk about what are you seeing happening? What are you telling clients? Because you get to work with people all over Canada, all over North America, all around the world. How do you sell during these uncertain times?
Well, again, Mark, my focus is leadership, but there is a selling component to leadership.
Yes, there is. Because we're all selling regardless of our job, right?
We are, but it's interesting. The higher up you go, I find for some reason it becomes harder to sell. And what I've seen working with clients, probably more so in the last 6 months, is we've all been through extreme change, right? And that continues. You know, I can mention COVID, supply chain issues, raising prices, and now we're, supposedly, I don't know, is that the R word that you used? Recession? Was that?
Don't use that word.
Oh, I didn't know what the R word was, and then it just dawned on me as I was about to let it out of my mouth. Reality.
There you go. Reality.
As a sales leader, it's very difficult, and the expectation is that you're going to lead change. Right, the world is changing. What you did, 2 years ago, last year, the year before is different. So a lot of sales leaders are struggling to get their ideas, new strategies, new tactics across. And what the challenge is they need to do two things. One, they need to sell senior leadership on their new ideas. It's not like a go. And senior leadership is very risk averse. I call them, and then you have to sell it up, and there's many sales prevention departments. I'm sure you're familiar with the sales prevention department, right?
I would call that HR and legal, but I don't know what you call
legal is there. And then if you're in some highly regulated industries, you have compliance people, and their job is to take no risk whatsoever. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do that. And they don't lead with, this is how you can do that. So it becomes very tricky for the sales leader to move stuff upwards. Once they get approvals, then they're moving it down to their team. And I'll talk a bit about some very specific things that I coach people on, because most of my work is done one-on-one coaching of how to sell up and how to, whether we call it sell down, lead down, get buy-in, are all critical. So you've got risk-averse sales leadership. And what's required, a lot of people talk about inspirational leadership and engaging people. And what I have found is the key to success as a sales leader right now is what I call bold sales leadership. And what I mean by bold, okay, is that you can have the ideas, but the bold leader is the one who can move it through the organization, who can sell it to senior management, and I'll repeat myself, and get their team to buy in. And I'm telling you, a lot of folks who I work with are phenomenal, but I think they lack the boldness. And part of my job is I encourage them, okay, you got to go sell this. You have a great idea. You can't sit on it. You can't put your head in the sand. And the expectation is from these leaders is that they're making change. except it's resistance from their people. Sorry, I almost used a Canadian word. You know, we're resistant. We've dealt with enough change. Stop. And then senior manager saying, well, you got to make change, but they're risk averse and they have so many departments that are going to stop you from doing things that are creative, that are new, that may offer some risk, but are going to help you win the battle. I've heard some ideas and I get excited when clients have great ideas.
Yeah, I got a question to ask you, because I see some sales leaders that are really capable of creating execution, but they can't sell up. They can't sell their idea up. And then conversely, I also see people who are very good at selling up, but boy, the execution just falls apart. How does a leader craft the ability to go both ways?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you. Great question. But the reality is, I kind of see selling up is not just about, oh, I've got a great idea. As a sales leader, you got to come with a plan for senior management, a well-prepared, thought-out plan. And what I find selling in the boardroom, assuming you're in the boardroom and you have all these prevention departments, and the CFO is also one of them, by the way, is you need to have at least one person on board with you to help you sell your idea. If you're going in alone and you have no one else in the room sold, you're going to have a lot of trouble because people are going to come at you with objections. And what I've done, what I find is very effective, if the answer is no, we're not sure, Stephen, is pilot. To me is, maybe you don't get the whole elephant in one shot, but if you have a great idea, let's pilot it. And there's low risk in piloting. It's easier for management to buy in, but then you can have proof of concept. So one of the techniques we use is sell a small piece, but move it forward.
I like the idea that you said of have kind of, so to speak, a champion. If anybody listening is into the SaaS technology, sales, MedPick is a sales process, and one of the C stands for champion. And what you're saying is when you're selling up, you want to have a champion kind of having a seat in the boardroom with you.
100%. Otherwise, you're like a lame duck because, and one of my friends coined the phrase sales prevention departments. And I love it because he is a great leader. And it's always, we can't, I'll use his real name, George. George, we can't do that. George, compliance. And George is very passionate. And he's able to move things through because they're afraid he's going to steamroll them. But you need that boldness to move things forward. The other thing is that senior management forgets is there's downside risk for doing nothing. And you need to put that on the table that, hey, if we don't do this, what's the risk?
I'm going to stop you right there because right there is a great point regarding sales also, because the number one reason customers don't buy is not a competitor, but they fail to make a decision. They choose not to make a decision.
Status quo.
Status quo. And you're saying that also happens in the boardroom. And I totally agree with that, which says that we as salespeople have to be able to quantify and qualify what's the risk of no decision.
Right.
What happens if no decision is made? And I don't think salespeople at the street level, when they're facing the customer, do a good job of that. And I don't think we do any close to a good job when we're selling it up.
So we're aligned on that thinking. And, it's very interesting because, assuming most sales leaders come from the sales role and they've moved up gradually, or maybe they've had a rocket climb, but now they're banging their heads trying to move things forward. And I tell you, my biggest frustration when I was a sales leader is having my hands tied. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do those things. So certainly presenting the downside risk. Don't be shy, be bold. And that's what I'm encouraging my folks who I work with is you've got to be bold. You got to go in there. And even if you pilot, like pilot's a win to me. Even if you don't get the whole elephant in one bite, you can take little chunks away and prove what you're doing if you're against serious resistance. And then there's upsides. Let's not forget that, yes, there's downsides by sitting on our butts. And I've, sometimes leadership doesn't want to hear that, but there's also upsides for great ideas. And I encourage folks. So as a sales leader, when you're going to senior management, even if you're the VP of sales, sometimes we forget, we think, hey, we can just present this and we're off, and then we get shot down. Is you got to be bold, and you got to be prepared with a case, and have that champion in the room with you saying, yeah, I like Stephen's idea. Let's go with it.
One of the bold strategies that I see sales leaders doing, and I was guilty of this when I was managing a 700-person sales force, is you ask forgiveness. You just go ahead and do it and ask forgiveness.
I love it.
You know what? I tell you what, you only got so many ace cards in your deck, and eventually you burn the deck and you're in trouble. Now, we got a lot of comments coming in here, and I'm going to pop.
I was wondering what was down below. I kept seeing things.
Yes, well, we got an active audience out there, and here's one: opportunity cost is so overlooked in staying status quo. I totally buy into that. And what I find so interesting is, in fact, I was working with a company this morning. We were working through TCO, total cost of ownership. When you buy our service, what's your total cost of ownership? And you have to look through what are the risks. If you don't buy from us, what are the risks?
Right.
And I don't think sales leaders do a really good job of looking at that opportunity cost, or really being able to spell it out to where finance can buy into it. Because all they do is paint these wild pictures, puppy dogs and roses will suddenly appear.
Well, I mean, you figure if you get excited, you can sell anything, right? But it's not the case in the boardroom. And the CFO is always your friend. If the CFO is your friend, you do well, because usually your general manager is looking to the CFO to just make financial sense. So if you remember, my first comment is come prepared. Don't have a great idea without the preparation as to what's the cost, what's the downside, how are we going to get there, who's involved, and be able to answer all the questions, which sometimes is hard for sales leaders, because they're all about the inspiration, which is great. I'm talking about being bold and coming there with the confidence to move something forward. Otherwise, you're a lame duck.
Again, you just hit on something that just a flash. And I see this with sales leaders. They spend all their time with their people, people and the customers, and let's make stuff happen. And the only time they get involved internally is when there's a problem. And you go, wait a minute, hold it. Look at sales. You develop the relationship before the problem arises. If too many times I see salespeople selling in something and then they walk away, and then the customer has an issue. Well, you never developed a relationship. So guess what? Now we got a problem. Sales leaders need to be doing the same thing. And I would challenge sales leaders listening, watching. When was the last time you went to lunch with your CFO? Ooh. And by the way, you better pay for the lunch yourself and not expense it. Okay.
Yeah, they're looking. They're looking. It's true, but it's interesting. So you kind of sit quietly and you hope they pick up the bill, just because it's financially prudent for them to do it, and not hit your sales budget. But really, the message in times of change, and that's how I kind of frame it. That we're going through extreme change. You need to be bold, because the status quoers, or the people who are afraid to move things forward, are going to get killed. I mean, and sometimes you're going to fail. Big deal. Well,
but you have to make it. Yeah, something really cool here, because we don't necessarily know what the tea leaves are going to do 6 months from now, 3 months.
Honestly,
so we have to be absolutely flexible. I was working with a VP of sales the other day, and we were really kind of going through and assessing the organization. Who are the players, and who can we bank on? And you have to be. I think sales leaders have to be prepared to make those difficult decisions before they have to be made.
Right. And I have to assume, well, at least not even assumption, clients I'm working with, their business has changed incredibly, whether it means, that they're selling virtually, or they're selling price increases, or they don't have product to sell, but they're still in the business, right? And they still need to have customers. So then the challenge becomes, and I want to make sure I cover this off as well. I have some thoughts on how to get your team to buy in, right? Because he said, as I agree, some people are good at moving things up, but lousy at selling things down. Some people are great at both. And most folks I work with are really good. But part of the challenge is their people have experienced extreme change. Many of them, and I don't want to say are close to the B word, which is burnout, BO, burnout. But people, salespeople are stressed, right? At the end of the day, their quotas are still there, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, one more change, and that's it." And so the concepts I've shared, and I guess talking to a person who's an expert in sales hunting, these are not new concepts. Come prepared, demonstrate upsides. But for leadership, I find, oh my God, I'm educating people.
They're not new concepts, and yet so many times they don't get executed. I'm reminded of a quote from Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people. He's no longer one of the wealthiest, but savvy investor. He always made the comment, he said, you don't swing at a pitch until it's over the plate. But conversely, you figure out what the pitch is when it's coming at you. So if you stop and think about that, I love that. I got to be prepared for whatever might happen. But I don't take action until the pitch is over the plate. We got so many comments that are just rolling in. I'm trying to pop them up there as fast, but it's interesting. Here's another LinkedIn user says, onboard clients, sales leaders need to onboard internal departments. And wow, isn't that the case? Because how many times does really the boardroom have no clue what sales is all about? Over my career in corporate America, corporate Canada. No, it's corporate America. I can't lie.
We're close,
anyway,
we're close.
Close. Anyway, I remember at one point in time, I had a president who was absolutely scared of sales, absolutely scared. And at the same token, yeah. And at the same time, I had another president at another time, same company, who was just loved sales, and I could get him out to customers, and we always made magic happen. But I had to lead upward completely differently based on which person was sitting in the presidency.
100%. And sometimes we become the inverse of our bosses, right? But I've had one very senior sales leader who part of their development was to connect in with other departments and get to know them. They were one step from VP, and we've worked on that. And there was, a little bit of trepidation, fear, but we've overcome that. And I tell you, it's much easier to move your projects and your ideas forward if you've got friends, as opposed to what I call the prevention departments.
I totally agree with you. It's interesting. Harvey McKay, the motivator. In fact, I was just with him. He just turned 90. I was just with him.
Oh my God.
I was just with him.
Swim with the sharks without being eaten.
Yes, swim with the sharks and dig your well before, and he talks about the value of relationships throughout the organization. And it is so true, because here's the whole thing. If you're a sales leader, you want your salespeople focused on the customers. Okay. So that means you got to help clear out all the other issues. So guess what? Your job is to develop those internal relationships, regardless. And somebody had written the quote, way lost in the stream here, but there are some salespeople who are great at creating relationships with really difficult customers, and yet can't do the same thing with internal.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a question of effort. So I don't know how much time we have, Mark. I want to make sure I'm offering.
We got just a few minutes. We got about 3 minutes left here.
So just some thoughts on leading your team and getting buy-in, because it does come down to execution. If you have the greatest idea, you've sold it, and then say, okay, Rosen, go ahead and do it. Or Hunter, go ahead and make it happen. And I just have simple 5 points that have helped me be successful as a sales leader. And I have coached so many sales leaders on how to make it happen. One, you need to bring your people into the plan. It can't be, boom, we're dropping the plan on you, right? Let them own it. Let them be part of it. Maybe you work on all the what we're going to do, and you include them in the hows. Again, for me, selling, I used to always have a wonderful, and I encourage this to my clients, have one of your sales managers be your internal champion. to influence the rest. And if you're a sales manager and you have salespeople, have one of your salespeople, again, as the champion, who people are going to look to and say, hey, that's a good idea, as opposed to, we can't do this. Because you get a lot of this, we can't do this. And you've got to come ready to address those objections. And even if they're a true objection, you can agree with folks, but be ready to be honest and to share with them. And also, I used to have a coach way back when. We used to call her Auntie Pat, an older woman. She always says, what's the whiffum? And I was like, whiffum, what's in it for me? And part of always selling to your people is what's in it for them. And really what's in it for them if they execute this effectively. Because part of your success, once you've sold your idea, is how well you execute. So as that leader, whether you're leading sales managers, well, you're leading salespeople, it's really about getting them to buy in and to own the plan and bring them as part of the process. Include them. Get some champions in your group sessions.
I love that. Hey, we only got about a minute left. I'm going to throw you a trick question. I'm going to throw you a trick question here. You ready? Okay, here's the trick question. Should a sales manager share with their team difficult news that may happen later on down the road? In other words, we may have to go through some layoffs. We may have to go through some changes. Should the sales manager tip their hat to the sales team, or should they keep them in the dark?
Good question. So the easy answer is it depends. If it's speculative, I wouldn't open up the rabbit hole, to be honest with you. If there are changes coming, because what it does is it sidetracks everybody. But I also believe in authentic leadership and being honest with your people as to what's going on. So, let's say, God forbid, business is down. It's certainly talking about the issues. If there's something going on that's very speculative, I wouldn't open up the can of worms, because it defocuses people. You lose your good people as a result. So it's a very careful line that you've got to walk in leadership, because, let's say senior leadership is thinking about something. If they're not moving in that direction, and you open the can of worms, is it only causes concerns and defocus. And my whole model of successful leadership is about focus. And you talk about sales reps cleaning up some of their stuff. Well, as sales leaders, part of the problem why it's hard to be bold and lead is because you're so busy dealing with minutia.
Yes.
And there's a Canadian word for minutia. It's called caca. That there's too many Zoom meetings, too many phone calls, too many other meetings, too many fires to put out, that you can't lead. You can't be bold. Maybe even know how to be bold, but you're too busy with the other stuff that's not really contributing to your business.
I like that. I like that, because I always find further up in the organization, they deal with facts, but in the sales organization, they deal with emotions. And I like what you said, because things can spin out of control. I've seen that. I went through that. I went through that as a young salesperson. We were going to go through change, and everything just stopped. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, it comes back to the credibility that the leader has developed. Hey, time is running out. Now, we got the after the show that starts here in just a second. But Stephen, how do people get in touch with you?
Okay. They can go to my website. My website is starresults.com. They can find out about our focused sales leadership framework for success in times of change. That's probably the best place. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always kind of bumping around on LinkedIn, putting up content and seeing all the great content my colleagues are putting up. They can reach me at 905-737-4548. My main focus is working with sales leaders one-on-one. I coach because coaching, in my mind, is the most powerful force for change and growth. And you can do tons of training, which is great. But for sales leaders, the one-on-one component basically takes the most important people in your organization and helps them elevate their skills, build better teams, and build a performance culture, and get rid of the Canadian word for minutia, because otherwise you can't focus on what's important. So
great.
Even
Rosen, we got
starresults.com.
It's starresults.com. We got to wrap up here. Stick around for the after the show. It starts in exactly 16 seconds. You've been listening to the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter, your host. And hey, I invite you to check out the Sales Hunter University. How do you find it? Go to thesaleshunter.com and you'll see it right there. Now, let's go back to the After the Show. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hey, the time has flown by. I had a lot of other things to say, but I wanted to pass on the message about.
Well, that means we just got to get you back on for a second show. But so anyway, so you're up in Canada, and what are you finding up there? What is new in your life? Because you said you're well, we don't need to talk about family. Let's just talk about Canada in general. What's the economy like?
My family. I've got two wonderful kids. One is in sales, just got her performance reviewed today, and she is a star.
Oh, gee, why would I be surprised?
I don't know. She's far better than I ever was, but she's working for a CPG company.
CPG, consumer packaged goods. That's how I cut my teeth. I spent 16 years in the CPG industry.
So there you go. So anyways, it's been an interesting year because food inflation is insane.
Oh, incredible.
I think Americans get half the food before even Canadians can get. So there's been supply chain issues.
Yep.
But she has really managed well. So I'm very proud of her. And my son has just got into the gaming industry and had his first trip and actually was in sales as a BDR. And I have to tell you that's a tough job.
Oh, I'll tell you what, BDR job. I'll tell you what, though, you cut your teeth on BDR and you can do just about anything.
I've told him that, but he lasted 8 months, which was good.
Oh, I know. Well, but I'll tell you what, though, what he experienced will stick with him for the rest of his life.
I'm with you. And he really is excited. He's in the sports gaming and
come on. Now, what's not to like in that industry? And
he loves sports. I mean, this kid can tell you 3 years ago who was the first draft choice and whatever. You know what I mean? Wow. Like he's very lucky. He's working in something that he loves, and it's great. For myself, I continue to work around the globe, coaching sales leaders. It's a quiet life. I don't have to sit on planes to do what I do, although once in a while wonderful. I do.
Good. Hey, the After the Show is time's up. We're actually 1 minute over time right now. Oh, my God. It's okay. Hey, but that tells us it went fast. So Stephen Rosen's been our guest today. StarResults.com is his website. He coaches leaders all over the world. Hey, I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. This has been another episode of the Sales Hunter podcast. Absolutely a kick in the pants. Every week, it's a new show. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week.